Another golden day for Team GB at the Olympics. There were victories in the modern pentathlon and the boxing, plus silver in the cycling and a bronze for Tom Daley in the diving and another in the 1500 metres. Also today, as Wales ends most COVID restrictions, more criticism for Boris Johnson as it's revealed he won't be self-isolating after a member of his staff tested positive. The UK sends firefighters to help tackle the raging fires in Greece as more holidaymakers are rescued by boat. And the butterfly princess, Charlotte's learning about conservation.
This is ITV News with Geraint, Vincent.
Good afternoon. It's been another golden day for Team GB at the Olympics. Galal Yafai is the new flyweight boxing champion and Joe Choong has become the first British man to win gold in the modern pentathlon. There were cycling silvers for Matt Walls and Ethan Hayter. Tom Daley added a bronze to the gold he won last week. And Josh Kerr also won a bronze in the men's 1500 metres. Our sports editor Steve Scott has all the action from Tokyo.
It's rare in Olympic boxing to see a fighter flawed, but Britain's Galal Yafai's thrilling early assault was an indication of what was to come. A dominant display from the first to last bell. Yes! Secured Team GB's 19th gold of the Games, boxing's first, and got the morning off to a perfect start. He told me later, fighting with his brothers as a youngster helped make him the champion he became today.
If it weren't for them, I wouldn't be boxing. They walked into the gym and I followed a few years later, punching each other and which all put me in good stead for this position I'm in now, and yeah, I can only thank them.
Modern pentathlon was devised as a sport to reflect the skills a soldier might need behind enemy lines. Coincidentally, Joseph Chung drew the same horse GB's gold medalist Kate French had ridden yesterday. After swimming, fencing and then the show jumping, the laser run came last. Chung pacing himself to perfection to become the first British man to win Olympic gold.
There is the new Olympic champion for Great Britain, Joseph Chung.
Big race this.
In the chaos that is cycling's Madison, Ethan Hayter and Matt Walls ran the favourites Denmark very close. On points, they actually tied with France for second place, but were awarded silver because they won the last sprint of the day, the final race within a race. It was a second medal for Walls this week after his gold in the Omnium.
Yes, get in!
Putting on a near faultless display, Tom Daley led a thrilling 10-metre platform final until the halfway stage. He was eventually overtaken by two Chinese divers and finished with a bronze. His second medal here and his fourth since his Games debut in Beijing as a 14-year-old. He says his success this time around has been helped by having a husband and being a father to his young son.
My husband and my son in my life, my family is the most important thing in the world, and feeling loved and supported allows me to go into competition not worrying about how I'm going to do and the outcome of things, because I know they're going to love me regardless. And when you feel like that, it takes so much pressure off and you can actually just enjoy it. So yeah, I feel very grateful to them.
The athletics team notched up another podium place on the track tonight. Josh Kerr ran a superb 1500 metres race, nearly passing world champion Timothy Cheruiyot on the line. It is Kerr's first major medal and Britain's first at this distance at an Olympics since Seoul in 1988. The Games draw to a close tomorrow, but there are still chances of medals in boxing and cycling. One of those chances falls to Laura Kenny, and any place on the podium for her will mean she will have won more medals than any other female Olympian in British history. Not a bad way for Team GB to sign off. Steve Scott, ITV News, Tokyo.
Now, the Russian Olympic Committee team also did well today, which means Team GB is now in 5th place with 20 golds, 21 silver and 22 bronze. That's 63 medals in total. Downing Street says Boris Johnson will not be self-isolating after a member of his staff tested positive for COVID during a trip to Scotland this week. Well, our political correspondent, Carl Dinnan, is here. Carl, how close was the PM to this person?
Well, the Guardian newspaper, which broke this story, has a source which says that they were side by side on several occasions. But Downing Street are disputing that today, saying they weren't that close. And the only time the Prime Minister would have even seen this official was during an outside visit to a police training college. They did, however, share a brief flight during the visit to Scotland, 15-minute flight, although, again, Downing Street say they were at opposite ends of the cabin of a passenger jet, and so the Prime Minister won't be self-isolating because he doesn't need to. But this does come just 3 weeks after the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, tested positive, and both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor said they wouldn't be self-isolating before rapidly U-turning and deciding that they did have to self-isolate after all. And the Labour Party say it's clear the Prime Minister hasn't learned anything from what happened last time. It's another example of one rule for them and another for everyone else. But as I say, Downing Street say this time the circumstances are completely different. He wasn't that close to the positive test, a case that's tested positive.
OK, Carl Dinnan, many thanks. Meanwhile, the vast majority of coronavirus restrictions in Wales came to an end today as the country moves into COVID alert level 0. Well, live now to Cardiff and the political editor for ITV Wales, Adrian Masters. Adrian, any sign of people celebrating there today?
It's the wind and the rain here in Cardiff Bay that we're battling and is putting people off celebrating, Geraint, not the COVID restrictions for a change, but there is a sense of excitement in pubs and nightclubs and restaurants as well as in private homes, because here in Cardiff Bay is not just home to pubs and restaurants, but it's also home to the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament. And for the last year and a half, the Welsh Government has been setting the COVID restriction rules. So that's why there's been differences between here in Wales and in England. So today, what has happened is that, as you said, virtually all restrictions, there's no limit on the number of people that can meet indoors or outdoors, in pubs, in homes, in restaurants. You can visit anyone you like, if you like them, that is. But there are some differences still here in Wales, the most noticeable being that it is still the law to wear face masks in busy shops, in GPs and other healthcare settings, and on public transport. So if you're visiting Wales, if you're on a train coming from London to Swansea, you will have to wear a mask at some point in the journey. So that's a big difference. What is happening here today is very similar to England's Freedom Day a few weeks ago, but you won't hear the word freedom used because the Welsh Government has taken a cautious approach. It's continuing to take that cautious approach, but it's no longer setting rules and laws. It's asking us to make the decisions instead.
Looks like the sun might just be coming out there in Cardiff Bay. Adrian, many thanks. Britain is to send a team of firefighters to Greece to help in the battle against the wildfires raging across the country. Overnight, ferries had to be used to rescue more than 1,100 people from the holiday island of Evia. From Greece, our correspondent Ben Chapman sent this report.
To be stuck on a beach, surrounded by fire on all sides. It was a waking nightmare from which the sea was the only salvation. Hundreds of residents of Evia Island watched from their rescue boat as the homes they'd left behind began to burn. Tackling Greece's wildfires has been made even harder by strong winds spreading the flames at speed. Amid the smoke, we filmed explosions in a village on the outskirts of Athens. The distress of those forced to leave their homes, surpassed only by those returning to the devastation the flames left behind. We left with a heavy heart, this man says. Now we are back, it is even worse.
There is a fine line between those areas which survived the flames and those which sadly did not. This house was completely destroyed, just the wrong side of this line, and here today there is still the stench of burning in the air and ash falling down.
Around 1,000 volunteers from the Hellenic Red Cross are collecting donations of food, water and medicines for firefighters on the front line. But its president told me they're also comforting those who've lost their homes.
The situation is very, very difficult. It's something unique. We never have seen such a catastrophe.
21 British firefighters will now travel here to support their Greek colleagues. A volunteer firefighter is one of 2 people who've now been killed here. The cost of these wildfires now being measured in lives as well as livelihoods. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Athens.
Finally, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have released a new picture of Princess Charlotte. The photo, taken by her mum, close to the family's home in Norfolk, shows the 6-year-old carefully holding a tiny butterfly in her hands, all part of the Big Butterfly Count initiative, a way of measuring the health of our natural environment. And that's it. The Community Shield between Leicester City and Manchester City is next here on ITV, after the news from where you are. I'm back just after 10:30. Until then, have a very good evening.